Hero wasn't just a martial arts film, it was a revolution wrapped in silk. Zhang Yimou took wire work, color theory, and political philosophy, then painted them across the screen in crimson, blue, and jade. But behind the visual poetry, nothing was simple. The government almost banned it, the star refused to fight. In one scene, they shot it in a library with 3,000 people who had no idea they were being filmed. These are 20 weird facts about Hero. And the bonus? A Hollywood legend tried to buy the film, then buried it for 2 years. Draw your sword. This story cuts deep. Hero didn't start as an epic. It started as a rejection. In the late 1990s, Zhang Yimou was exhausted. He'd spent years making intimate dramas, small stories about ordinary people crushed by history. Critics loved them, censors hated them, and Zhang was tired of fighting. So he made a choice that shocked everyone. He'd make a wuxia film, a genre he'd never touched, filled with flying warriors and impossible physics. Something beautiful, something commercial, something the government couldn't possibly object to, except they did. When Zhang submitted his script about an assassin trying to kill the king of Qin, officials panicked. The story was set during China's Warring States period, but the subtext was dangerous. A lone warrior questioning authority, debating whether unity justified tyranny, exploring the cost of empire. The censors saw allegory everywhere. They demanded rewrites, script changes, ideological adjustments. Zhang refused to back down, but he made a gamble. He'd framed the story as a meditation on sacrifice for the greater good, on peace through strength, and somehow, miraculously, they approved it. But the film Zhang wanted to make and the film Beijing thought he was making, those were two very different stories. Jet Li almost walked away before filming even began. Not because of money, not because of scheduling, because of fear. Li had spent years in Hollywood playing action heroes, kicking through bad scripts and worse sequels. He was tired, physically broken, spiritually drained. When Zhang Yimou approached him with Hero, Li's first response was no. The role of Nameless required more than martial arts. It required stillness, subtlety, emotional restraint. Li didn't think he could do it. He'd become a fighter on screen, not an actor. Zhang wouldn't take no for an answer. He flew to Los Angeles, sat with Li for hours, and told him something that changed everything. "This isn't about fighting," Zhang said. "It's about why we fight. It's about what we're willing to sacrifice, what we're willing to become." Li read the script again, this time seeing past the action sequences to the philosophy underneath, and he realized Zhang wasn't asking him to be a martial artist. He was asking him to be human. 3 days later, Li called back and said yes. But he made one demand. No unnecessary violence, no gratuitous blood. Every fight had to mean something. Zhang agreed, and together they created fight sequences that were less about destruction and more about dance. Poetry written in motion. The color palette wasn't aesthetic, it was architectural. Zhang Yimou didn't just want Hero to look beautiful, he wanted each color to tell its own story, to represent a different version of truth. Red for passion and deception, blue for melancholy and honor, white for purity and death, green for innocence and desire. Simple in theory, brutal in execution. Production designer Huo Tingxiao spent 8 months sourcing fabrics, testing dyes, building sets that could shift between color schemes. For the red sequence, they needed 3,000 crimson banners, each hand-sewn, each dyed using traditional methods that took weeks. The blue fight at the lake required a location where water, sky, and costume could merge into a single monochromatic dreamscape. They found it, but only after scouting 47 different lakes across China. The white sequence demanded snow that fell at the exact right speed, creating patterns that looked choreographed. When natural snow wouldn't cooperate, they built machines that could generate artificial flakes with mathematical precision. And the green bamboo forest, arguably the film's most iconic setting. Zhang had planned to shoot in a manicured garden, controlled and perfect. But location scouts found a wild bamboo grove in Zhejiang province, untouched, ancient, dangerous to navigate. Zhang took one look and scrapped everything. This was real. This was alive. They hauled equipment through mud, fought humidity, dodged falling bamboo. But what they captured was magic, nature collaborating with cinema. Maggie Cheung didn't speak to Tony Leung for the first week of shooting, not out of anger, not out of method acting, because Zhang Yimou forbade it. Their characters, Flying Snow and Broken Sword, were lovers torn apart by ideology, by competing visions of duty and sacrifice. Zhang needed that distance, that tension, that unspoken longing, so he kept them separated, different call times, different rehearsal spaces. Cheung later said it was maddening, working alongside someone she'd known for years, but couldn't talk to, couldn't laugh with, between takes. Leung found it liberating. He could build the character in isolation, discover Broken Sword's quiet sadness without outside influence. When they finally shot their scenes together, something electric happened. They weren't just acting anymore. They were rediscovering each other through the characters, and the camera caught every moment of recognition, hesitation, desire. Their fight scene in the calligraphy school wasn't rehearsed to perfection. Zhang told them to feel their way through it, to let the choreography emerge from emotion rather than precision. What you see on screen, two masters of martial arts cinema moving through space like water, like memory, that was built on a week of enforced silence and then sudden, overwhelming connection. Sometimes the best chemistry comes from keeping people apart until the exact moment you need them together. The calligraphy school fight almost destroyed a national treasure. Zhang Yimou wanted to shoot in a real ancient library surrounded by authentic scrolls and manuscripts, historical documents that had survived dynasties and wars. Officials said absolutely not. Too risky, too valuable, impossible to ensure. Zhang kept pushing. He argued that Hero was itself a historical document, a preservation of Chinese culture through cinema. Is still no. Then he found a loophole. There was a replica library in Xi'an, built as a tourist attraction, filled with reproduction scrolls that looked identical to the originals. Perfect, except for one problem. The replicas were made from modern paper, which fluttered wrong, reflected light differently, didn't have the weight of history. So Zhang made a deal. They could shoot in the real library, but with conditions so strict it bordered on absurd. No fire effects, no water, no contact with any scroll that couldn't be immediately replaced. Martial arts choreographer Qing Xiu Tong spent weeks redesigning the fight to work within those constraints. Wire work had to be rigged to ceiling beams marked as structurally sound. Every move was plotted to avoid displays of rare manuscripts. And on the day of shooting, 12 conservators stood watch, ready to stop production if anything went wrong. It didn't. The scene was captured in 2 days of meticulous, nerve-wracking precision. What looks effortless on screen was actually a high-wire act, where one wrong move could have destroyed irreplaceable history. Donnie Yen almost drowned during the chess house fight. The sequence, set in a rain-soaked pavilion with water streaming through wooden lattices, required Yen to perform wire-assisted spins while drenched and disoriented. The stunt coordinators had calculated everything: the wire tension, the rotation speed, the landing angles. What they didn't account for was the rain machines. Zhang wanted biblical rainfall, water falling so hard it became a character in the scene. So they cranked the machines to maximum output, 500 gallons per minute pouring down. Yen launched into his first spin, went upside down, and suddenly couldn't breathe. Water rushed into his nose, his mouth, his lungs. He was drowning in midair. The wire operators didn't realize anything was wrong. From their angle, it looked like a perfect rotation. It wasn't until Yen stopped moving, completely limp, that someone yelled "cut." They lowered him fast, pulled him horizontal, and Yen coughed up water for 10 minutes straight. Zhang was horrified, ready to scrap the sequence entirely. But Yen, once he could breathe again, refused to quit. He insisted they try again, this time with a scuba regulator hidden in his costume that he could bite down on during inverted spins. They shot the scene 17 more times that night. Every take, Yen risked drowning again. Every take, he nailed it. Because for Yen, Hero wasn't just another film. It was proof that Chinese action cinema could compete with anything Hollywood produced, and he'd die before letting fear ruin that. The arrow scene was designed by a mathematician. When Zhang Yimou envisioned Nameless meditating in a courtyard while 1,000 arrows fell from the sky, he didn't want random chaos. He wanted geometric perfection, arrows falling in patterns that looked both natural and impossible. Enter Professor Chen Wei, a mathematician from Beijing University who'd never worked on a film before. Zhang showed him rough storyboards and asked a simple question: can arrows fall like rain and still form shapes? Chen said yes, but it would require calculus, trigonometry, and computer modeling. For 3 weeks, Chen built equations predicting arrow trajectories based on bow tension, release angle, wind resistance, even the weight variations in individual arrow shafts. He programmed simulations showing exactly where each arrow needed to be fired from to create the patterns Zhang wanted. Then came the hard part: teaching archers to fire based on mathematical coordinates rather than instinct. They hired 200 archers, all trained in traditional Chinese archery, and gave them positions marked by GPS coordinates. Each archer had a firing time calculated to the millisecond. On the day of shooting, Zhang called action, and 1,000 arrows flew. The first take was chaos. Arrows everywhere except where they should be. The second take, closer but still wrong. By the seventh take, the archers had internalized Chen's math, their bodies becoming calculators. And suddenly, it worked. Arrows fell in spirals, in waves, in patterns that seemed to defy physics. Mathematics had become art, and Chen, the mathematician who'd never touched cinema, had helped create one of the most visually stunning sequences in film history. Zhang Yimou shot an entire sequence that never made the film, and it might have changed everything. Early in production, there was a prologue, a 12-minute opening showing Nameless as a child, watching his family destroyed during the Qin conquest. It explained his motivation, his hatred, why he'd dedicate his life to assassination. Zhang shot it in black and white, raw and brutal, showing war from a child's perspective. The footage was devastating, honest, unflinching. And when Zhang watched it in editing, he deleted the entire thing. Not because it was bad, because it was too good. It answered questions the film needed to keep asking. Hero worked because you never knew if Nameless was a hero or a pawn, whether his mission was noble or pointless. The prologue eliminated ambiguity, turned mystery into certainty. Zhang realized he'd made a fundamental mistake. He'd given the audience an anchor when he needed them adrift. So he cut it. All of it, against protests from producers who'd spent significant money on those 12 minutes. The film that remained was leaner, stranger, more open to interpretation. Critics would later debate Hero's politics endlessly. Was it pro-authoritarian propaganda or anti-authoritarian satire? The ambiguity wasn't a bug, it was the feature, and it only existed because Zhang had the courage to kill his darlings, even when those darlings cost a fortune and looked beautiful. The lake fight between Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung required 37 takes, not because anyone made mistakes, but because nature wouldn't cooperate. Zhang wanted to shoot at Zhuzhaigu Valley, where glacial lakes created water so blue it looked artificial, perfect for the film's blue sequence, except the water's color changed with the light, the angle, the time of day. Morning shoots produced water that looked greenish. Afternoon shoots were too bright, washing out the actors' costumes. Dusk was perfect, but only for 23 minutes before the sun dropped below the mountains. And you couldn't just shoot on any day. Clouds altered the reflection, wind disturbed the surface. Tourist boats occasionally drifted into frame despite permits blocking access. So every day for 2 weeks, cast and crew would set up at 4:30 a.m., waiting for that perfect window when light, water, and weather aligned. Chung and Lung spent hours in wire harnesses, ready to launch into their choreography at a moment's notice. Some days they'd get one take before conditions changed. Other days, none. By the end, both actors could perform the entire sequence in their sleep, muscle memory so ingrained it became meditation. And when you watch the final cut, that fight gliding across impossible blue water, you're seeing the result of patience, preparation, and nature finally deciding to cooperate for exactly the right 23 minutes. The film's most quoted line wasn't in the original script. During a rehearsal break, Jet Li sat with Zhang Yimou, discussing Nameless's philosophy. What drives a man to abandon assassination after mastering it? Li said something casual, almost throwaway. All under heaven. Zhang stopped. Those 3 words, translated from Tianxia, captured something essential. The idea of looking beyond personal revenge to see the bigger picture, the collective future. Shang rewrote a key scene on the spot. building an entire dialogue around that phrase. It became the film's ideological heart, the moment Nameless realizes killing one king might destroy the only chance for peace, that sometimes the greatest act of heroism is choosing not to act. The line sparked controversy. Some saw it as Zhang endorsing authoritarianism, suggesting unity under tyranny was preferable to chaos. Others saw critique, showing how power manipulates noble ideals to justify atrocity. Zhang never clarified, letting the ambiguity breathe. And it all started with 3 words Jet Li said, while eating a sandwich between takes, proof that sometimes the most important moments in cinema happen when the cameras aren't rolling and somebody's just thinking out loud. Harvey Weinstein bought Hero for American distribution, then locked it in a vault. In 2002, Miramax acquired North American rights for $10 million, an unprecedented sum for a Chinese film. Weinstein called it a masterpiece, promised a massive release, Oscar campaigns, the full treatment. Then he did nothing. For 2 years, Hero sat on a shelf while Weinstein played power games. He demanded cuts, wanted to trim 20 minutes for American audiences who he claimed couldn't handle subtitles or philosophical pacing. Zhang refused. Weinstein countered by simply not releasing it, letting the film age while its buzz died. Meanwhile, Hero was breaking records everywhere else. It became the highest-grossing film in Chinese history, dominated Asian markets, won international awards. American critics who'd seen it at festivals were furious, writing articles demanding its release. Quentin Tarantino heard about the situation and went ballistic. He called Weinstein directly, threatened to publicly shame him, and offered to present the film himself, lending his name to marketing. Weinstein finally relented, but barely. Hero got a limited release in 2004, 2 years late. With minimal promotion, it still made $53 million domestically, proving American audiences were ready for it all along. Weinstein took credit for its success. Everyone else knew the truth. He'd nearly killed one of the decade's most important films because his ego couldn't handle a director who wouldn't compromise. The sand dunes sequence required the crew to literally move a desert. Zhang Yimou wanted to shoot in the Gobi Desert, where wind-sculpted dunes created patterns that looked painted. But nature had other plans. Scouts found the perfect location, dunes stretching to the horizon, golden and pristine. Then, a sandstorm hit 3 days before filming, reshaping the entire landscape. The dunes Zhang had chosen were gone, replaced by different formations that didn't match his vision. Most directors would adapt or move locations. Zhang ordered the crew to rebuild the desert. Using bulldozers, hand tools, and 200 local workers, they spent 48 hours moving millions of pounds of sand, sculpting dunes back into the shapes Zhang needed. It was insane, expensive, borderline impossible, but Zhang insisted every element had to be perfect, even if that meant playing God with geography. When shooting began, the relocated sand performed beautifully. Jet Li and Donnie Yen fought across dunes that looked natural, but were actually human constructions. Nature improved by obsession, and during their wire-assisted battle, wind kept filling their mouths and noses with sand. They'd spit, wipe their faces, and continue without complaint because everyone understood. Zhang wasn't making a normal film. He was making something that demanded suffering, and suffering was part of the contract. Tan Dun's score almost wasn't a score at all. Zhang Yimou wanted silence, believing the visuals were powerful enough without musical manipulation. He screened an early cut with no music, just ambient sound and dialogue. Test audiences were confused, calling it cold and distant. Zhang finally admitted he needed a composer, but someone who understood restraint. Enter Tan Dun, who just won an Oscar for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But Tan didn't want to repeat himself. For Hero, he proposed something radical. Build the score around percussion and traditional instruments, but record them in unconventional ways. He hung drums in empty concert halls and captured their echoes. He played ancient Chinese string instruments underwater, recording the distorted vibrations. He hired 30 taiko drummers and had them perform during a thunderstorm, mixing raindrops with drum beats. The result was a soundscape that felt ancient and futuristic simultaneously. Music that didn't tell you how to feel, but suggested possibilities. Zhang was skeptical until he heard the final mix. Suddenly, scenes he thought were finished revealed new dimensions. The calligraphy fight gained philosophical weight, the arrow sequence became meditative, and the ending, it broke hearts. Tan hadn't just scored the film. He'd excavated its soul, found frequencies Zhang didn't know existed. It became one of cinema's great director-composer collaborations, built on initial resistance and eventual surrender to genius. Jet Li performed his own calligraphy for the film, and it wasn't fake. Zhang Yimou didn't want close-up hand doubles or CGI brushstrokes. If Nameless was pretending to be a master calligrapher, Li needed to actually write. The problem was, Li's calligraphy skills were amateur at best. He could write his name, handle basic characters, but master-level artistry? Impossible. Zhang gave him 4 months to learn. Li hired Master Wang Dongling, one of China's most respected calligraphers, who put him through training that bordered on torture. 6 hours daily practicing individual strokes, holding brushes in meditation poses until his hands cramped, learning not just to write, but to channel emotion through ink. Wang taught him that calligraphy wasn't about letters, but about breath, about qi flowing from body through brush to paper. Li threw himself in completely, practicing during lunch breaks before dawn, in hotels after shooting other projects. His hands developed calluses from brush handling, his posture changed, becoming more centered, more grounded. And when it came time to shoot the calligraphy scenes, Li wrote the characters himself. Single takes, no cuts. The word he writes, jian, in or sword, was actually Li's brushwork, imperfect but honest. Zhang loved it precisely because it wasn't master level. It was a warrior pretending to be a scholar, and the slight hesitation in Li's strokes revealed everything about Nameless's disguise. The greatest performance in that scene wasn't Li's face. It was his hand, trying desperately to be something it wasn't. The King of Qin's palace was a $6 million set built specifically to be destroyed. Production designer Huo Tingxiao spent 8 months constructing a historically accurate replica of a Qin dynasty throne room, massive columns, intricate tile work, a ceiling that rose 40 feet high. Every detail was researched, every material authentic. Zhang shot for 3 weeks, capturing the palace in pristine condition. Then, for the film's climax, where Qin soldiers flood the throne room, Zhang wanted controlled chaos. Extras stumbling, banners falling, furniture shattering. The stunt coordinator designed a sequence where 500 soldiers would charge through the set, deliberately breaking things for cinematic effect. Producers panicked. "That's the expensive set. Can we build a duplicate?" "No time, no money," Zhang said. So they reinforced key structural elements, marked furniture that could break versus pieces they needed for continuity, and shot the destruction across 2 days of escalating mayhem. By the end, the palace looked war-torn, aged decades in 48 hours. Set decorators worked overnight, gluing broken pieces for reaction shots, then breaking them again for different angles. What you see on screen, that pristine throne room slowly degrading into chaos, that was real destruction happening in the real time. Zhang could have used CGI, could have faked it, could have preserved the set for resale to other productions. Instead, he built something beautiful and let violence transform it. Because Hero was about empires built on destruction, and even the set design needed to bleed. Maggie Cheung's wire work hospitalized her twice. The actress had performed stunts before, done her share of martial arts films. But Hero's choreography was different, more balletic, more dangerous. During the calligraphy school fight, one wire snapped mid-flight, dropping Cheung 8 feet onto a wooden floor. She cracked 2 ribs, refused to go to the hospital until after they'd finished the day's shooting. A week later, during a wire-assisted spin, the harness malfunctioned and twisted wrong, catching her at a bad angle. She felt something tear in her back, stayed silent through the take, then collapsed once Zhang called cut. This time, production shut down for 4 days while doctors stabilized her spine. Zhang visited daily, apologizing, offering to recast or rewrite around her injuries. Cheung refused every option. She'd committed to flying snow as a woman who'd weaponized grace, turned beauty into violence. Playing that required risk, required pain. She returned wearing a back brace under her costume, took lighter pain medication so she could stay sharp, and completed every remaining stunt herself. Her dedication inspired the crew. If Maggie could fly broken, they could solve any problem. Years later, Chung admitted those injuries still ache in cold weather, permanent souvenirs from Hero. But she's never regretted it, because some performances require sacrifice, and flying snow was worth bleeding for. The film's color grading bankrupted the post-production facility. Zhang Yimou's obsession with perfect color wasn't just about shooting, it extended through every stage of production. He hired colorist Tim Stepan, who'd worked on everything from commercials to blockbusters, and told him, every frame needs color correction, individually, manually. Stepan thought Zhang was exaggerating until he saw the director's notes. Entire scenes marked with demands like more crimson, less cherry, or this blue should feel like memory, not water. Stepan set up shop in a Hong Kong facility, top-of-the-line equipment, talented team. They estimated 6 weeks for color work. It took 9 months. Every single frame of Hero's 99-minute runtime was color-corrected individually. 142,560 frames adjusted by hand. Some scenes required 40 versions before Zhang approved. The facility's computers ran 24/7, overheating regularly, 2 machines completely fried. Costs spiraled from $200,000 to over $2 million, money the facility had to eat because they'd stupidly agreed to a fixed contract. By month 8, Stefan was having stress dreams about color wheels, but when it was done, when they projected the final print, everyone went silent. It was the most beautiful film anyone had seen. Every frame a painting, colors so perfect they seemed to vibrate. The facility lost money but gained legend status. Years later, colorists still reference Hero as the gold standard, the film that proved what's possible when obsession meets craftsmanship. Sometimes bankruptcy is the price of perfection. Zhang Yimou almost quit during the final edit. After 18 months of production, countless battles with studios, censors, weather, and physics, Zhang sat down to assemble the film, and nothing worked. The color sequences felt disconnected. The timeline was confusing. The philosophy seemed heavy-handed. Editor Ru Zhaiping later said, Zhang walked out 3 times, convinced they'd created an expensive disaster. The problem was structural. Hero told the same story 4 different ways, each version contradicting the previous one. It was designed to disorient, to make audiences question truth itself. But in rough-cut form, it just felt sloppy, like they couldn't decide on a story. Zhang and Ru tried everything. They reordered sequences, cut entire sections, added narration, removed narration. Nothing clicked until Ru made a radical suggestion: trust the audience. Stop trying to guide them, stop explaining. Just present the contradictions and let viewers decide what's real. Zhang was skeptical, but desperate. They restructured the edit to lean into confusion rather than away from it, letting each color sequence stand alone without clear transition or interpretation. And suddenly, miraculously, it worked. The film became a puzzle that rewarded attention, a meditation on perspective where no single truth dominated. Zhang later said that edit saved not just the film, but his entire career, because Hero taught him that cinema didn't need to explain everything. Sometimes mystery was the answer, and confusion was its own kind of clarity. The Qin Shi Huang assassination attempt depicted in Hero was real. Everything else in the film, the characters, the specific plot, the philosophical debates, that was fiction. But the historical core was solid. In 227 BC, an assassin named Jing Ke tried to kill the king of Qin using a poisoned dagger hidden in a map. The assassination failed, Jing Ke was killed, and Qin went on to unify China through brutal conquest, becoming the first emperor. Zhang Yimou studied this history obsessively, reading competing accounts, researching Qin's actual policies, and he discovered something fascinating. Chinese historians couldn't agree on whether Jing Ke was a hero or a fool, whether his mission was righteous resistance or pointless violence. That ambiguity became Hero's foundation. Zhang wasn't trying to rewrite history, he was exploring the impossibility of knowing history objectively. By the time he finished, he'd created something unique, a martial arts film that was actually about historiography, about how stories change depending on who tells them and why. The Chinese government approved it because they saw a film about unity and strength. Western critics saw anti-authoritarian critique. Both readings were valid because Zhang had built deliberate ambiguity into every frame. History became fiction became philosophy, and audiences left theaters arguing about what they'd actually seen. That was the real achievement, creating a popcorn movie that sparked legitimate debate about truth, power, and narrative itself. Hero was China's official Oscar submission for Best Foreign Language Film in 2003, but it wasn't nominated. The Academy passed, giving the slot to other films they deemed more important or innovative. Zhang was devastated, not for his ego, but because he'd believed Hero could open doors for Chinese cinema, prove to Hollywood that Asian films were commercially and artistically viable for Western audiences. When Miramax finally released Hero domestically in 2004, it was no longer Oscar eligible. That window had closed. The film made money, got excellent reviews, built a devoted following, but it never got its Academy moment, never stood on that stage to show the world what Chinese filmmaking could achieve. 20 years later, the Oscar snub looks foolish. Hero influenced everything, from Hollywood's approach to wire work and color grading, to streaming platforms investing in Asian content, to an entire generation of filmmakers who saw Zhang's film and realized beauty could be revolutionary. The Academy couldn't see it then. They were still locked in old ways of thinking, unable to recognize that the future of cinema was arriving in languages they didn't speak. Hero didn't need the Oscar. It was already creating its own legacy, one that would outlast whatever film won that year. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't winning the award. It's rendering the award irrelevant. After Hero wrapped, Jet Li kept one prop that he was never supposed to take, nameless as sword. It wasn't valuable, just aluminum painted to look like steel, light enough for wire work. But during filming, Li developed an attachment to it. That sword had been in his hand for every major emotional beat, every philosophical revelation, every moment where Nameless chose peace over violence. On the final day of shooting, Li quietly packed the sword in his luggage and flew back to Los Angeles. Zhang Yimou found out weeks later when prop masters did inventory. He could have demanded its return, made it an insurance issue. Instead, he called Li and said, "Keep it. You earned it." Li mounted the sword on his wall, and years later told an interviewer it reminded him of something important, that Hero wasn't about fighting, it was about knowing when not to fight. The sword hung there, never used again, a symbol of restraint. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you never draw. And sometimes the greatest action is choosing stillness over chaos, peace over glory, surrender over conquest. That fake aluminum blade meant more than any trophy because it represented transformation. A warrior becoming a philosopher, choosing wisdom over violence. Hero changed cinema, but that sword, that changed Jet Li. And maybe in the end, that was the point all along.